Friedrich Nietzsche once warned, "When you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." Now, imagine you could step into every abysses you've ever gazed into: the bank vault, your rival's office, even your ex's apartment. Tell me, would you be using the abyss, or would the abyss, in the end, consume you? But this is not just his story. On the same rainy night, this same cursed power was granted to 5 others: an ER nurse fighting to save lives, a grieving mother trying to mend the past, a delivery driver crushed by debt, a silent bartender, and a fallen basketball star. 6 individuals, 1 power, 6 paths leading to heaven or hell, and his fall is only the beginning of this experiment on human nature. I woke up to my phone screaming at me. Again. It was Frank, my landlord. The guy's got a voice that could scratch paint. I let it go to voicemail. I didn't need to hear it. I knew what it was about. The glow from my laptop was the only light in the room. Spreadsheets, columns of numbers I'd moved around. Client security deposits. A sinking feeling sat in my gut, heavy and cold. I caught my reflection in the dark screen. A guy in a cheap dress shirt, practicing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It looked more like a grimace. The old man's funeral was my Hail Mary. Guys like him, antique dealers, they always have cash stashed away. Maybe I could sniff out a lead, find a way to patch the holes in my accounts. I stood there in the rain, under my black umbrella, feeling the fabric of my one good suit get damp. I wasn't there to mourn. I was there to work. When the sky really opened up, everyone scrambled. I got shoved. My shoulder slammed hard against the old man's coffin. It was weirdly cold. I brushed myself off, pissed about the suit. Later, driving home, I found a piece of old, yellowed paper stuck to the back of my jacket. Must have picked it up in the chaos. "Damn it," I muttered, crumpling it in my fist. Just my luck. More trash. Back in my apartment, the silence was deafening. I poured a drink, my eyes drifting to the wall separating my living room from the kitchen. The whiskey was right there on the counter. I was so tired. The stupid paper was still clutched in my hand. I thought, God, I wish I could just walk through this damn wall and get it. And then I did. No big flash, no sound. One moment I was leaning against the wall, the next I was stumbling into my kitchen, nearly knocking the bottle over. My heart was trying to punch its way out of my chest. I stood there, breathing hard, staring at my own living room through the doorway. What the hell? I looked at the crumpled ball in my hand. Slowly, I smoothed it out. Weird symbols. Chinese, maybe. My mind, always calculating, kicked into gear. This wasn't trash. This was a key. I started testing it. My bedroom wall. Solid. Then, not. I just thought about being on the other side, and I was there. The hallway door. Locked? Didn't matter. I walked right through it. A crazy grin split my face. This was my edge. The world was finally giving me a break. All those walls, literal and otherwise, that kept guys like me down, they were just air now. I stood in the middle of my crappy apartment, king of my own little invisible castle. That cold knot of anxiety in my stomach, it was gone, melted away by a hot, greedy excitement. This wasn't a miracle. It was a tool, and I was going to use it. Waking up the next day, I half convinced myself it was all a dream, a stress-induced hallucination. But then I saw the crumpled paper on my nightstand, and the grin crept back onto my face. This was real. I felt chosen. No, screw that. I felt owed. The world had been holding out on me. and now I was just collecting what was mine. But I'm not an idiot. You don't just run into a bank vault on day one. You start small. You test the waters. My first target wasn't money. It was information. Anderson, from the rival firm. Smug bastard. Always stealing my leads. His office was on the 12th floor. I waited till well after dark. Standing outside the sleek glass and steel building, I felt a thrill. No alarms, no keys, no security guards to sweet talk. Just me and a wall. I took a breath, pictured the other side of the outer wall, a janitor's closet, according to the blueprint I'd studied online. I stepped forward. The sensation was still bizarre, a moment of cool darkness, like walking through a waterfall of black silk. And then, I was in. The smell of bleach and mops. I did it. I let out a shaky laugh. I was a ghost. I slipped into Anderson's office. His computer was password protected, sure, but his desk calendar wasn't, and his notebook was just sitting there. I took pictures of everything. Client meetings, project quotes. It was like reading his playbook. I left the same way I came, my heart hammering not from fear, but from power. This was better than money. This was control. A few days later, I happened to bump into a client Anderson was courting. I casually mentioned a figure. Anderson's exact quote, but slightly lower. The client's eyes widened. I closed the deal that afternoon. Sitting in my car afterwards, I didn't feel guilty. I felt smart. The rules were for suckers, but information was abstract. I wanted to feel it. My neighbor, Ben, the guy with the stupidly expensive watch and the louder laugh, he'd once made a joke about my car. It stuck with me. One night, listening to him laugh with his friends through the wall, I'd had enough. I focused, stepped through our shared wall, and was standing in his pristine apartment. There it was, on his dresser, a Patek Philippe. It gleamed under the dim lights. My first instinct was to take it, but that was too obvious, too risky. A better, nastier idea formed. I picked up the watch, walked into his bathroom, and dropped it into the toilet. I didn't flush. I just left it there, submerged in the water. The next morning, I heard his scream through the wall. It was the best coffee I'd ever had. This wasn't just control. This was punishment. For all the Bens in the world. Now I was ready for the big leagues. The bonds. The bank. I'd cased it for weeks. Knew the shifts of the guards. The blind spots of the cameras. The vault door was a masterpiece of engineering. And I was about to make it completely irrelevant. The night was perfect. Rainy. Quiet. I stood in the alley beside the bank. The cold stone wall in front of me. This was the thickest one yet. For a second, doubt whispered, what if I got stuck? What if I materialized inside solid steel? I pushed it down. That was fear talking. And fear was for people without my advantages. I stepped through. It felt longer, darker, the pressure immense. My lungs screamed for air that wasn't there. And then, I was through, stumbling into the silent, chilled air of the vault. Rows of security deposit boxes, trays of bonds. I was in. I took a deep, shuddering breath. I hadn't realized I'd been holding it. I didn't get greedy. Just one stack of bearer bonds from the back of a tray, untraceable, like taking cash. I stuffed them into my jacket, my hands trembling, but this time from exhilaration. I walked back through the wall, the bonds clutched against my chest. In the rain-washed alley, I looked like just another guy in the rain, but I was a king. Back home, I spread the bonds on my kitchen table. I paid off Frank. I bought a ridiculously expensive watch for myself. But as I sat there, surrounded by the things I'd bought, the high faded. The silence in my apartment felt deeper than ever. The bonds were just paper. The watch was just a thing. They didn't fill the hole. They just made it quieter. That's when I thought of Sarah. My Sarah. The one I told myself I lost because I wasn't good enough. Didn't have enough. Well, now I had the ultimate advantage. I could go anywhere. I could be anywhere. I could finally fix things. A plan started to form in my mind, perfect and insane. It wasn't enough to have money. I needed to reclaim what was mine. All of it, including her. The money, the watches, the thrill of the steal. It all started to taste like ash. My apartment was full of stuff, but it felt emptier than ever. The silence was so loud it rang in my ears. I'd won, right? I'd beaten the system. So why did I feel like I was losing my mind? That's when I found the old photo. Sarah and me at Coney Island. We looked happy. We looked broke. Her smile was real, not the practiced one I used on clients. A hot, sharp pain shot through my chest. Regret. I thought I'd buried that feeling. Turns out, I just walled it off. And now, I had the keys to every wall. It started simple. I just wanted to see. Her apartment was across town. A nice building. Better than mine. I stood outside. The familiar cool darkness washing over me, and I was in her hallway. My heart was pounding. This was different from the bank. This was personal. I didn't touch anything that first time. I just stood in her living room, breathing in the smell of her. That vanilla and lemon scent she always loved. It was like a punch in the gut. I looked at her books, her couch, the little cactus on her windowsill. It was all so her. I felt closer to her than I had in years. It felt right. I went back. Again and again. It became a ritual. Tuesdays and Thursdays, she worked a late shift at the hospital. I'd wait till she was gone. Then I'd let myself in. I'd sit in her favorite armchair. I'd flip through her photo albums, tracing our old life with my finger. I started to feel like I was reclaiming a part of myself I'd lost, but it wasn't enough. Just being there when she was gone was like watching a movie on mute. I wanted the sound. I wanted to feel her presence. So I started going when she was home. I'd phase into the space between the walls, my body suspended in the dark, silent cavity. I could hear everything. The soft rustle of her turning a page, the clink of a spoon in her tea mug, her humming. Sometimes she'd talk on the phone to a friend. I'd listen, learning the rhythms of her new life, a life without me. A bitter jealousy would curl in my stomach. She sounded fine, happy even. How could she be? One night, I was in the wall, listening. She was on the phone with her sister, and she mentioned me. Mark? God, no. That feels like a lifetime ago, she said, and she let out a little laugh. It wasn't a mean laugh. It was dismissive, like I was a mildly embarrassing story from her past. He was so desperate to be something he wasn't. It was exhausting. The words hit me like physical blows. Desperate. Exhausting. I pressed my forehead against the cold inner surface of the drywall, my fists clenching. She didn't get it. She didn't see the man I was becoming. The power I had. I wasn't that guy anymore. The jealousy curdled into something darker, more possessive. She didn't understand the new me because she hadn't seen me. Not the real me. The king in the shadows. I had to show her. I had to make her see. That's when the surprise idea was born. It wasn't enough to be a ghost in her walls. I needed to be a presence in her life again. A dramatic, unforgettable one. I found the ring. It was bigger, flashier than the one I couldn't afford back then. It cost a small fortune. It was perfect. The plan was simple. I knew her routine. She'd come home, take a shower, then make tea in the kitchen. I would be waiting for her in the living room. I'd step out of the wall not like a monster, but like a mystery, a miracle. I'd be holding the ring. I'd tell her I never stopped thinking about her, that I'd found a way to overcome every obstacle, that we were meant to be. I played it over and over in my head. The shock on her face would turn to wonder, to awe. She'd finally see the man I truly was. The night I decided to do it, I felt calm, certain. This wasn't a violation. This was a reunion, a correction of a past mistake. I stood in my apartment, looking at the wall that separated my world from hers. On the other side was my future, my real life. I straightened the sleeves of my suit jacket, a nervous habit. This was the biggest deal of my life, and I was about to close it. I took a step toward the wall, the little velvet box feeling heavy in my pocket. I focused on her living room, on the spot just behind her sofa. I pictured her face, not the dismissive one from the phone call, but the smiling one from the photograph. This was it. The ultimate move. The final flip. I walked forward, into the darkness. The cool darkness of the in-between space felt different this time. It felt resistant, thicker, like wading through sludge. For a split second, a primal fear, the one I'd been drowning in confidence and greed, screamed in the back of my head, "Get out, now." I ignored it. It was just nerves. Stage fright before the big performance. I pushed through. The living room materialized around me, dim and silent. Perfect. I could hear the shower running down the hall. My heart was a drum solo in my chest. I adjusted my tie, a smooth, practiced motion. Showtime. I stepped out from behind her sofa, brushing a speck of invisible dust from my sleeve. I was in, the king in his new castle. I reached into my pocket, my fingers closing around the velvet box. The plan was flawless. Then, the water stopped. My breath hitched. Right on schedule. I heard the bathroom door open, the soft pad of her footsteps on the hardwood floor. She was heading for the kitchen. I positioned myself, ready to speak her name, to watch the beautiful shock dawn on her face. But the footsteps didn't go towards the kitchen. They came straight towards the living room, a jolt of panic. This wasn't in the script. She walked in, wrapped in a towel, her hair wet. She was looking down, rubbing her temples, heading for the couch. She didn't see me at first. She was just there. So close I could smell the steam on her skin. Then her head snapped up. Our eyes met. It wasn't shock. It wasn't wonder. It was pure, unadulterated terror. A silent, wide-eyed scream frozen on her face. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The look in her eyes. It wasn't looking at a person. It was looking at a monster. A thing that had violated the most sacred space she had. "Sarah, I started. My voice too loud in the silence. The smooth line I'd practiced dying in my throat. She stumbled back, a short, choked gasp finally escaping her. "Mark? How did you get in here?" Her voice was a razor blade of fear and disbelief. The velvet box in my hand felt suddenly stupid, grotesque. The plan was in ashes. The miracle was a nightmare. And a hot, ugly anger boiled up in me. Anger at her for not understanding, for not seeing the grand gesture, for making me feel like a monster, I wanted to surprise you, I said, the words coming out flat and wrong. I took a step forward. I just wanted to explain, to make her see, she screamed. A raw, piercing sound that shredded the last of my illusions. "Get out!" she shrieked, scrambling backwards, her eyes wild. "Get out!" Panic and rage fused into a single blinding impulse. I had to get out of here. Now. I turned and lunged for the wall I'd come from. The same wall. My escape route. My mind was screaming one thought. Through the wall. Now, I focused all my will on it. On the other side. On my apartment. On safety. I hit the wall. Not the cool, liquid darkness. Solid, unyielding drywall and studs. A brutal, jaw-rattling impact that sent a lightning bolt of pain through my shoulder. I bounced off it and fell to the floor. No. No, no, no. I scrambled to my feet, my heart trying to claw its way out of my chest. I could hear Sarah sobbing, fumbling for something. I didn't care. I threw myself at the wall again, palms flat against the painted surface. Through. Go through. Nothing. It was just a wall. A dead, stupid, ordinary wall. The ability was gone. The curse had finally called in its debt, and it had picked the perfect moment to collect. A metallic click from behind me. I turned. Sarah was standing there, holding a small black pistol, her hands shaking so badly the barrel wavered in the air. Her face was streaked with tears, white with terror. "Please," I whispered, the word a dry croak. I wasn't even sure what I was begging for. The gun roared. The sound was immense, final. A painting on the wall next to me exploded, glass and splinters flying. She hadn't aimed at me. Not yet. The noise, the violence of it, broke something in me. A final, desperate idea. If I couldn't go through, maybe I could go in. I turned back to the wall, not trying to pass, but trying to hide, to merge. I pressed myself against it, my mind screaming, "Take me back! Let me in!" And the wall yielded, but not like before. It didn't swallow me whole. It grabbed me. The cool darkness turned viscous, greedy. It sucked me in, but only halfway. Then it stopped. The pressure was unbelievable. My chest, my hips, my legs, they were encased in a concrete and steel prison. I was stuck, literally stuck between her world and mine. I could only move my head and my left arm, frantically clawing at the air, at the wall that had betrayed me. I heard sirens in the distance, growing closer. Sarah was crying, talking to a 911 operator, her voice broken. He came out of the wall. I think he's stuck. There's something in the wall with him. I stopped listening, because I heard it too. A dry, scraping sound. Not from in front of me, from inside. From the darkness all around my trapped body. Something was moving in the walls. Something that had been waiting. The king of the castle. The ghost in the walls. Now, just a piece of the furniture. A permanent fixture. The scraping grew louder. Closer.